Let's talk about the Dyson sphere. It's a big idea, maybe the biggest idea humans have ever had about engineering. The concept is simple enough. You build a structure around a star, the whole star, and you capture all its energy. Not some of it, all of it. The idea came from a physicist named Freeman Dyson back in 1960. He wasn't thinking about building a home for humanity, he was thinking about aliens. How would we find them? He figured a truly advanced civilization would have massive energy needs. Eventually, they'd need more energy than their planet could provide. The next logical step is to tap their local star directly. A star puts out an incredible amount of energy. Our sun, for example, radiates about 400 septillion watts of power every second. That's a 4 with 26 zeros after it. We on Earth receive a tiny fraction of that, a billionth of a percent. The rest just radiates out into empty space. It's the ultimate waste. And Dyson thought that if a civilization built a structure to capture all that energy, it would have a unique signature. The structure would absorb the star's light, but it would have to radiate its own waste heat. It would glow, but not in visible light. It would glow in the infrared. So if we point our telescopes at the sky and see an object that's unusually bright in the infrared, but dark in the visible spectrum, we might have found a Dyson sphere. We might have found someone else. That was his original point. It was a way to look for cosmic neighbors. But, of course, humans being humans, we immediately asked a different question. Could we build one? The first image that comes to mind is a giant solid shell, a metal sphere completely encasing the sun. Like a massive birdcage with the sun as the bird. This is the version you see in movies and video games. It's a powerful image, but it's also the wrong one. Freeman Dyson never suggested a solid shell. He knew it wouldn't work. A solid shell around the sun would have serious problems. First, the material science is a nightmare. You would need a material with impossible tensile and compressive strength to hold its own shape against the sun's gravity. It wouldn't just be pulled toward the sun. Parts of the sphere would be pulled differently than other parts, creating immense stress. No known material could withstand that. It would tear itself apart. Second, it's gravitationally unstable. Think about it. The sphere and the sun are two separate objects. The sphere doesn't orbit the sun. It just sits there surrounding it. If any part of the sphere gets a tiny bit closer to the sun, say from a meteor strike, the sun's gravity will pull harder on that part. It would create a wobble. That wobble would get worse and worse until the sphere eventually drifts and crashes into the star it's meant to harness. It's like trying to balance a needle on its point. The slightest perturbation and it all comes down. So, the solid shell is out. It's a fantasy. What Dyson actually proposed was something more like a swarm. A Dyson swarm. Imagine a cloud of individual objects. Billions, maybe trillions of them. They can be solar collectors, power stations, or even habitats. Each one would be in its own independent orbit around the sun. They wouldn't be connected. They would just be flying in a very, very dense formation. Together, this cloud of collectors would form a spherical shell. From a distance, it would look solid. It would intercept almost all of the sun's light, but up close, it's a loose collection of parts. This is a much more realistic idea. It's still mind-bogglingly difficult, but it doesn't break the laws of physics. We know how to put things in orbit. We do it all the time. A Dyson swarm is just that on an unbelievable scale. This approach solves the big problems of the solid shell. There's no impossible material strength required. Each satellite is just in a stable orbit, and if one collector is destroyed by a meteor, it's not a catastrophe. The rest of the swarm keeps working. You can just build a new one to replace it. It's also scalable. You don't have to build it all at once. You could start with a few collectors, then a ring of them, then more rings, until you have a full swarm. So, the question isn't, could we build a solid shell? The answer to that is almost certainly no. The real question is, could we build a Dyson swarm? Let's think about what that would actually take. The first thing you need is material. A lot of material. How much? Well, let's do some rough math. The Earth is about 150 million kilometers from the sun. That's a good distance for our swarm. So we're talking about a sphere with a radius of 150 million kilometers. The surface area of that sphere is immense. It's about 280 quadrillion square kilometers. That's more than 500 million times the surface area of the Earth. Now, how thick do our collectors need to be? They don't have to be very thick. Modern solar panels are thin. The support structures, radiators, and electronics would add some mass. Let's be generous and say the average collector is a few centimeters thick and has a density similar to rock or metal. If you do the math, the total mass you need is staggering. You would need a mass equivalent to a large planet. Something bigger than the Earth. Where do you get that much stuff? You can't ship it from Earth. Lifting that much mass out of our planet's gravity, well, would take more energy than humanity has produced in its entire history, by many orders of magnitude. It's a non-starter. The material for the Dyson swarm has to come from space. The best place to look is the asteroid belt. It's full of raw materials: iron, nickel, carbon, silicon. Everything you'd need to build solar collectors, computers, and support frames. But the asteroid belt, while full of asteroids, is also very spread out. The total mass of the asteroid belt is only about 4% of the mass of our moon. That's not nearly enough. So where do we go? We need a planet. A whole planet. The best candidate is Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, which is convenient. It's also very dense and rich in metals. It has a massive iron core. And most importantly, nobody lives there. There's no ecosystem to destroy. It's just a big, hot rock full of raw materials. The plan would be to completely disassemble the planet Mercury. You would build automated mining machines, refineries, and factories right on the surface. These machines would chew up the planet, process the raw materials, and manufacture the components for the swarm collectors. Then you'd use a device called a mass driver, essentially a giant electromagnetic catapult, to launch those components into solar orbit. You wouldn't need rockets and fuel, you just fling the parts into space. This process itself is an engineering challenge on a scale we can barely comprehend. We're talking about a mining operation that makes everything on Earth look like a kid playing in a sandbox. We'd need robots that can build other robots, self-replicating factories, like a level of automation far beyond anything we have today. These machines would have to be smart, durable, and completely self-sufficient. They would work for centuries, maybe millennia, grinding a planet down to nothing and turning it into a cloud of orbiting machines. So, let's say we solve the material problem. We have a planet-devouring industrial base on Mercury. Now we have another problem: energy. Building a Dyson swarm takes a huge amount of energy. Mining, refining, manufacturing, launching trillions of tons of material into orbit. All of it requires power. But the whole point of the Dyson swarm is to get energy. It's a classic chicken and egg problem. You need the sphere to get the energy, but you need the energy to build the sphere. The solution is to bootstrap it. You start small, you build the first few solar collectors using energy from solar panels on Mercury, or maybe a small fusion reactor you bring from Earth. Those first few collectors start generating power, a lot of power. You use that power to build more collectors. Those new collectors generate even more power. You use that power to build even more collectors. It's an exponential process. The more you build, the faster you can build. The first collectors might form a small ring around the sun in the same orbit as Mercury. This is sometimes called a Dyson ring. It's the first step. Once the ring is complete, it's already generating a colossal amount of energy, far more than humanity uses today. You could beam that energy back to Earth, or use it to power your ever-expanding industrial machine. You would continue adding more rings at different inclinations until you've built up a dense swarm that encloses the entire star. This whole process would take a very long time. Even with exponential growth, you're dealing with an astronomical amount of material. Estimates range from centuries to tens of thousands of years. This isn't a project for one generation. It's a project for a civilization. It would require a level of long-term planning and stability that humanity has never, ever demonstrated. We have trouble planning for the next 50 years, let alone the next 5,000. Let's assume we can handle the long-term commitment. We have the materials, we have the energy plan. What about the actual construction in space? You've got trillions of components being launched from Mercury into specific orbits. They need to be assembled. Or maybe they don't. Maybe each collector is a self-contained unit, a solar-powered satellite. We'll call them swarm bots. Each swarm bot would have its own simple computer, solar panel, and thrusters for station keeping. The real challenge is traffic control. You have a cloud of trillions of objects all orbiting the sun at incredible speeds. They are all pulling on each other gravitationally. The sun's gravity is the main force, but the planets are still there. Jupiter's gravity, in particular, would be a major disturbance, tugging on the swarm and potentially disrupting orbits. Each swarm bot would need to constantly adjust its position to avoid collisions and maintain a stable orbit. This would be the most complex computational problem ever conceived. No central computer could manage it. The light speed delay across the solar system would make real-time control impossible. The swarm would have to manage itself. Each bot would need to communicate with its neighbors, negotiating for space, adjusting its path. It would be a decentralized, self-organizing system, a cosmic beehive. We'd also need to worry about cosmic debris. The solar system isn't empty. There are asteroids and comets flying around. An impact on one of the swarm bots could be catastrophic. It could create a cloud of shrapnel that then hits other bots, causing a chain reaction. A cascading failure that could wipe out a significant portion of the swarm. The swarm would need a defense system. Maybe a network of lasers to vaporize incoming threats. It would also need self-repair capabilities. Redundant systems and swarms of maintenance bots that could fix or replace damaged collectors. And then there's the heat. The second law of thermodynamics is always a party pooper. You can't just convert all that solar energy into useful work. A lot of it will become waste heat. The swarm collectors will absorb sunlight and get very hot. They need to get rid of that heat, or they'll melt. They would need massive radiators, probably on their dark side, facing away from the sun. These radiators would glow brightly in the infrared spectrum. This brings us back to Freeman Dyson's original idea. A finished Dyson swarm wouldn't be invisible. It would be one of the brightest things in the sky if you were looking in the right wavelength. It would be a giant heat lamp. Let's step back for a moment. We're talking about disassembling a planet, building self-replicating robots, creating a self-organizing swarm of trillions of satellites that can defend and repair itself, and doing this over thousands of years. Is this plausible? The honest answer is not for us. Not now. We are so far from this level of technology, it's almost laughable. We are a Type 0.7 civilization on the Kardashev scale. A Dyson swarm is the work of a Type II civilization. The gap between us and them is immense. It's like asking a tribe of Bronze Age humans to build a nuclear aircraft carrier. They don't have the materials, they don't have the tools, and they don't even have the concepts. They wouldn't know where to start. We're in a similar position. We don't have fusion power that can run for centuries. We don't have artificial intelligence that can manage a continent-sized mining operation. We don't have self-replicating machines. We have never mined an asteroid, let alone a planet. Our most ambitious space projects involve a handful of people and a few robots. A Dyson swarm would require a permanent population in space, a solar system-spanning economy. But here's the interesting part. While the scale is beyond us, none of the individual steps I've described violate the known laws of physics. We're not talking about warp drives or time travel. We're talking about mining, manufacturing, and orbital mechanics. It's an engineering problem. It's not a science problem. The difference is crucial. A science problem might be impossible. An engineering problem is just a matter of scale, energy, and time. So, could we as a species ever get there? Maybe. It would require a fundamental shift in who we are. We would need to become a true spacefaring species. We would need to solve our problems on Earth first. Things like energy, war, and short-term thinking. A civilization that can't manage its own planet is not ready to re-engineer its solar system. But if we did survive and continue to advance, our energy needs would continue to grow. At some point, we might face a choice. Either limit our growth, or go out and get more energy. If we choose the latter, the sun is the ultimate prize. There are other, less ambitious versions of the idea. You don't have to build a full sphere. You could build a statite, a type of satellite that uses a solar sail to hover in one place. A Dyson bubble would be a swarm of these statites. They would be made of incredibly thin, light material, and the pressure of the sunlight itself would hold them up against the sun's gravity. This would require far less material than a swarm of orbiting collectors, but it would require much more advanced materials science. Another idea is the Dyson Harrop satellite. This is a proposal for a satellite that would use a long wire to generate a magnetic field. This field would interact with the solar wind, the stream of charged particles flowing from the sun. It would harvest energy from the solar wind's kinetic energy, not its light. This is a much smaller scale idea, but it's a step in the same direction, tapping the star's power directly in space. What would life be like for a civilization with a Dyson swarm? They would have access to a truly obscene amount of energy, about 1 trillion times more than what we currently use on Earth. With that kind of energy, you could do almost anything. Like, you could power computers the size of planets, you could move planets, you could build new worlds. The concept of scarcity, at least in terms of energy, would cease to exist. The swarm itself could be a place to live. The individual collectors wouldn't just be solar panels, they could be habitats, spinning cylinders to create artificial gravity, each one a little world in itself with its own ecosystem. Trillions of them. The total living area would be millions of times greater than the surface of the Earth. You could have a population of quadrillions. It boggles the mind. This is the ultimate dream of the Dyson sphere. not just as a power station, but as the foundation for a civilization of unimaginable size and capability. So let's bring it back down to Earth, or rather, away from Earth. The biggest hurdles are not just technical. They are social and political. Who gets to decide to disassemble Mercury? What if some people want to preserve it? Who owns the Dyson swarm and controls the energy it produces? Does one nation build it? Or is it a project for all of humanity? These are questions we don't have good answers for. The sheer timescale is also a barrier to our way of thinking. A project that takes 10,000 years to complete requires a level of continuity and shared purpose that seems alien to us. Empires rise and fall in a few centuries, languages change, cultures transform. How do you maintain focus on a single engineering project for a period of time longer than all of recorded human history? Perhaps the builders wouldn't be human, at least not as we know ourselves. They might be our distant descendants, evolved or engineered to be something different. Or they might be the artificial intelligences we create. A machine civilization might have the patience and the single-minded focus required for such a task. For an AI that can think on a timescale of millennia, a 10,000-year project might not seem so daunting. So, to answer the original question, could we build a Dyson sphere? No, we can't. Not today, not next year, not next century. We are at the very beginning of our journey into space. We are still taking baby steps. We are still tied to our home planet. The technical, logistical, and societal challenges are simply too great for our current level of civilization. But the question is not, could we build one tomorrow? The question is it possible? And the answer to that is a tentative yes. The path from here to there is incredibly long and difficult. It would require centuries, or more likely millennia, of sustained technological and social progress. Fusion, build a massive off-world industrial base, develop truly autonomous AI, and learn to think and plan on civilizational timescales. It's a useful thought experiment. It forces us to think about the limits of engineering and the future of humanity. It's a benchmark for what a truly advanced civilization might be capable of. It represents a transition point, a moment when a species graduates from living on a planet to living in a solar system, when it stops being a planetary species and becomes a stellar one. For now, the Dyson sphere will remain where it began in the realm of science fiction and theoretical physics. It's a beautiful, awe-inspiring concept, a vision of a future so grand it's hard to even imagine. It's a reminder of the sheer scale of the universe and the potential that lies dormant in the laws of physics, waiting for a mind smart enough and a will strong enough to use them. We are not there yet, but the dream of reaching for the stars and perhaps one day enclosing one is a powerful motivator. It's the ultimate expression of life reaching out to capture the light.